BB48 Black family.
Baby
Welcome back to
48.
another episode here at the School of Urban Philosophy, where we are always straight up, straightforward, and straight to the point. So once again, we are back. And for those of you who were able to tune in and spend some time with us last week, I mentioned that this month we was going to come back every week, every Thursday, and have various discussions surrounding Black history. We want to stick with Black history. It's very important that we talk about the history. It's very important that we understand the history. It's very important that we interpret the history, and most importantly, that we embody the history and become the history. That's one of the reasons why I never say Black History 365. Because we don't have to say Black History 365. And for those who do say it, great. Let me qualify why I don't say it. Black history is who we are, is who we are, and it's what we become because we are active participants in the making of history in the present. So when you know the history, you become the history and you act the history. But February becomes a sacred month for us because ancestors have designated it as such. And because the ancestors have designated it as such, we're going to honor the ancestors and we're going to follow suit. And this becomes a time of the year when we can rejoice in Black history. We can talk about the Black history, the parts that we enjoyed, the parts that we feel like we don't enjoy. All of that makes us who we are. So we talk about it. We celebrate it. We honor it because it's very important for us as a people. So before I shift this, to my comrades that have joined me tonight, I want to make one point. And that point is for those of you who are tuned in right now, that's listening to us. History orientates us. It gives us an orientation. That's why it's so important. Right? There is no politically clear individual that's lacking historical knowledge. You can't be politically clear without history. And that's the reason why, when Black people enter into the realm of politics, oftentimes they are not able to speak, think, and be in the best interest of Black people because they're lacking something so essential to their overall orientation, and that's their history. So, one blood to my comrades. How y'all doing?
One blood and counterclockwise, Baba. Doing all right this evening. Bakari, how you feeling?
I'm doing good.
Okay.
Today is a good day to talk about what we're going to talk about, man. I was inspired by that title, Bob. That was a good title for today's video.
Well, Mister, what's the title?
Is Black history real?
Is it real?
Oh, you know what? I see it now. Okay. I thought we was gonna go straight from the dome. Okay, is it real? Baba, I want to introduce something, and I would like your comment and your feedback on it, if you don't mind.
Yes,
because
sir.
You mentioned that in order for our people to for us to exercise our will politically, we have to have an awareness of our history. What would you say to those who may feel the need to compromise because they have said that they have read our history? And in our history, you have had people who have maybe made some gains through making concessions. Let's say somebody pulls on a Booker T. Washington with the so-called Atlanta Compromise, or let's just say is maybe fear-based. Maybe in the case of somebody being silenced because they're too outspoken based on them looking at the history and saying, well, we've been repressed for exercising our history. How would you address somebody with that particular mindset and frame of view?
So The first thing I would seek to ascertain, I would attempt to find out if the person is genuine in his or her personal stance. And if they are genuine and they're receptive and open and they really mean good for Black people, and I can come to that conclusion, then I would address it. And what I would help them to understand is that when we look at the history, the history can never be isolated and fragmented. So if a person were to point to Booker T. Washington, which the Atlanta Compromise, or what they call the Atlanta Compromise, that's a fragment in relation to the work that Booker T. Washington was doing. So the majority of Booker T. Washington's work, you know what I'm saying, was behind the scenes pushing, you know what I'm saying, African sovereignty, African liberation. You know, Booker T. Washington was in that particular realm. So I would help them to understand that we can't segment and fragment the history, and therefore we have to look at the totality of what we know about who we are. And then we look at the totality about what we know about who we are and see what is the most consistent behavior of African people in history. What's the most consistent behavior? Because the most consistent behavior becomes the collective behavior of African people, not the behaviors that's not the most consistent. So even though there's time periods we may find a person who committed treason, that's not the most consistent behavior in our history. Treasonous people. The most consistent behavior are committed people. The most consistent behavior are people who have worked in the service of African people to push us forward. So to interpret history, we have to look at the totality of what we know about the history and look for that which is most consistent, because that becomes the character of the history.
Okay, I like that. So don't even worry about the number of insurrections that were snitched on. That's just the fragment, right?
That's just a fragment. You know, that's an abnormality in relation to the behaviors of African people, because the insurrections that we talk about that happened within the United States of America only reflects the uprisings, the fightings that we exemplify throughout the world, right? So we fought in Europe, we fought in the Caribbean, we fought on the continent, right? So what we see in the United States of America is a continuity of struggle, right? So that's what that is. So yes, now the individuals who went to these white captors and gave them some inside information that allowed them to be able to suppress some of the insurrections, that's an abnormality. That's not the normalcy in terms of what it means to be African. That's something else. Because a people's culture is judged by the collective behavior. It's the collective behavior, not the blimps that show up within that. The most consistent collective behaviors is what makes the culture the people.
Okay. Understood that.
What's up?
Yeah. What's up, brother?
What's up? A beautiful holiday to all my Black family that's tuning in tonight. Hope y'all having a good night so far. But yeah, most definitely, you know, Black history is too real. You know, like, you see us, we right here. Was that real? Like, come on, like, we don't need to question things like that. You know, but I get it though. We got to put it out there because people is doubting, they is sleeping. But I think one of the most important things is for people to look at themselves. Like, every day we're making Black history. You know, we're not saying that, you know, we're going to claim any and everything. But at the end of the day, everything that we do is going to be remembered or forgotten if we feel like we don't need to remember that. And so at the end of the day, you know, I like to look back at my story, at my origin as well, in addition to, you know, what our ancestors have done. You know, looking at myself, I was born in New York City. Man, and I'm proud about that because it's a lot of things that didn't happen in New York City. You know, my whole dad's side of the family, you know, I got to go to Queens. I got to go to Brooklyn to see them. You know, I was there living in New York for 6 months. When I was born, my parents said I came out smiling. I wasn't crying. I came out smiling for real. And that's why I got my name. The Kare means happiness. And so like all of that is a part of who I am and a part of what I'm going to do. You know, another aspect when I look at like my origin story is like victory over negativity, because I didn't always make it here, honestly. You know, one night my parents had went to a house party and they really shouldn't have been there. If my mom is pregnant, like, there's no reason why they should be going to no house party. But they went to a house party, and I guess one of the guys that my dad was riding with, you know, he got into a situation there. And when they're leaving the house party, you know, from my dad perspective, he said somebody emptied a whole clip at the car. And so, you know, luckily nothing happened to anybody. Nobody got touched, nobody got hit. So in that moment, you know, whoever the driver was, you know, they must have been doing a pretty decent job. And then at the same time, the spiritual forces that was acting on that situation to prevent anybody from getting touched, you know, that's a part of Black history. And so if we talk to our people, we could find many stories like that. You know, you got people stepping in the way of bullets to make sure children don't get hit. You know, you got single mothers and single fathers struggling every day to make ends meet and to make things happen. And so I think it's really important to look at the full picture of what Black history is. And I believe that when Black people look at the full picture, I think it's easier to understand, okay, my ancestors did this, my ancestors did that. Because, you know, going back to New York City, you know, it's a lot of people that I look up to that come from that area, you know. You know, I look up to DMX. I do. I look up to Pop Smoke. I look up to who was I get ready to say, man? Fabulous. I like Fabulous. Like, you know, these are people that I look at, you know. Baba Malcolm X coming up out of New York City. Baba Tupac, my favorite rapper. Tupac coming up out of New York. So it's like when we just look at life itself, we can just see how dynamic energy is and how strong energy is. And when we value that, I believe that's what allows us to come into the present moment with so much energy. Because one of the things that Baba Booker T. Washington talked about in his book Up From Slavery, he said that when people have a race pride about their ancestry, these are the things that allow them to do great things in the present moment. Because he said he was looking at white people just like he couldn't really understand, you know, why white people was in their position and why we was in our position. And he kind of like felt slighted. But when he looked, he said, man, you know what? They stand on their ancestors' shoulders. You know, everything they got, their ancestors gave it to them, even though, you know, they was conniving. But he seen that they had a certain pride or arrogance because of what their ancestors gave them. And so I just believe, you know, when we look at our personal life, we look at our family life, and when we look at our collective life as a race, I believe we can use that energy to go even further and to really understand what's going on when we talk about Black history.
Great point. Great point.
Yeah.
Either of you want to take a shot at the question?
Hotep, Janisha. Why do we look at history as something that happened so long ago? I think in part we kind of touched on that the last live that we did. We view it as dates and events of the past. And oftentimes fundamentally, the way in which we look at history is the same way in which we look at many things. And in that regard, we look at it from a European perspective, something that's in the past, past dates, past times, no real correlation with today, no real correlation with who we are and where we're at today. That's the reason for it. And many of us are preoccupied with trying to plan out and understand the future. So that's still is looking at it from a European perspective, being future orientated, not concerned about the past. That's the white world view. That's how they look at things. That's how they assess their reality. For us, however, is different. So our orientation has to be an orientation that's centered and principled on who we are culturally as a people. And who we are culturally as a people is a people who understand the realness and the nowness of history. Because many of us for where we are at in the world is due to history. Many of our personalities is due to history. My brother just got finished speaking about his personal history with his mother and his father, how he earned his name, him coming into being and how that plays a part in who he is and what he seeks to bring to the table today. See, that's history, and that's how we got to be able to carry our history. So we just got to be able to understand it from a much larger perspective, in the sense that something that may have happened thousands of years ago, it influenced who and what you are today, who and what you believe today, how we move and how we operate, how we think and how we behave today, started in history. So we got to be able to open up our minds, I'll say, open up our minds to understanding that that is a reality. And if we get that part, then we can go into history, research, study, see what exactly happened, where the change happened, where the shifts happened, in order so we can begin to shift ourselves back. Brother Dakara, you had anything you wanted to add on?
Yeah, I was going to say that I just think it comes down to most definitely like how we've been miseducated. Because like how you was already saying, you know, white people condition us to believe that history is just about our ancestors. And there's nothing wrong with looking at our ancestors. That's good. But I feel like when people is already being oppressed, there's already going to be a certain detachment from our past because of what comes with it. You know, the pain that comes with it. You know, some of the things that people may be embarrassed about. You know, they saying like, no, I'm not really trying to be with that history stuff. But for those people who are aware enough to step into the responsibility of history, I think we can help our people get it. Because most definitely, when I was going to public school, social studies was my least favorite class. You know, even when I got into college, I went to FAMU my first 2 years in college. Man, I did not care nothing about social studies. I remember being in class like, you know, cheating. You know, some people would leave answers on a test book, and I'm just write what they got on the booklet.
Bro, I got a
But
D in high school.
man,
We're doing
like
that
that, but
today, though.
that's the thing. Like, we're conditioned to skate by.
Yeah.
You know, as long as we can, like people just say, you know, I'm finessing, like kind of using that word the wrong way. But at the end of the day, that's what this society generates. People who want to like, you know, try to take shortcuts all the time. But it's like you can't really do that when we're talking about being African. You know, it don't work. That wouldn't have worked in our society. Like you would get exposed because you're around too much greatness. Like I remember J. Cole said something in his song, you know, he said we demand great. Like he said something like that in one of his songs. But that's what it is. Our ancestors, we demanded greatness. It wasn't no way you could be flawed like that. But I just think when we come into the understanding of what it means to be black, then we could look at the change makers. You know, like looking at my grandmother, my father's mom. Like, my grandfather passed. My dad was 3 years old, and so you know, my grandma, she had 4 children. You know, and raising children in the projects, raising children in the projects. She's going to college and working full time. You know, 3 girls, 1 boy. My father, and so it's like something like that is a major shift. It's a big deal because if she break down, all 4 of them children is going to go haywire. But stuff like that, we got to be able to see how that's also Black history. And if we can look at our grandparents, and we can look at ourselves, and we can look at our parents, and we can also see the value in somebody like Mama Harriet Tubman, because revolutionaries don't fall out the sky. Like Mama Harriet Tubman, her parents was already hip to a certain extent of how to be a revolutionary. Like her mom, she was not playing no games. I remember one time I was studying her story, and like the plantation owner was trying to sell Mama Harriet Tubman brother. Her mom was not having it. The plantation owner came to the door with the with a white guy was trying to buy her son, and she was like, you know, give me the boy. Where the boy at? And the mom said, if you come any closer into this door, I'm gonna split your head open. She told that to the plantation owner and the person trying to buy her son. She was not playing. Mama Harriet Tubman father taught her how to read the stars, taught her how to find food in the forest, and also taught her how to find clean water. So it's like, you know, but those are her parents, though. You know, we could look at somebody like Mama Harriet Tubman and just be like, you know, she was a great woman, like she just fell out the sky, but she was actually kind of initiated into her place, and she just went even further. And so when we look at ourselves, we got to be able to see, you know, what are the good things our parents gave us? What are the things our friends gave us? What is something that our community gave us? You know, like, I think when we look at it like that, we can better value something like history and not think it's something that's so far behind.
How
Great
about
point.
that? Bob, I had a question because in the last live, You said it. You said it was about a stupid question about 3 times, but to the question of, I'm gonna paraphrase it. But if history can't pay your bills, what good is it? I'm paraphrasing it, right?
Yeah.
Run that. Can you run that back? Because I really liked your response to that one. I think it's worth hearing that one again.
So it's essentially that question is asked in an attempt to devalue the importance of history. So the question is people raise their question to devalue the importance of history, which makes it a stupid question, because the more grounded you are in history, the more enabled you are to execute the things you need to execute in life. See, when you don't have history, you get caught up in working, paying bills, working, paying bills. When you have history, you know that it ain't just about working and paying bills. Even if you do have a job, you know it's about, I'm going to take this route through this job to get a type of self-liberation. History gives you something else. So even if you are working a job, you're not working a job to be situated and stuck independent. History facilitates the independence within you, because once you become independent in yourself, then you can create interdependence with other people. And that's the African way. But when history is devoid and we're seeking ways to devalue history, we further remove ourselves outside of history. Because history, remember, history is made in the present. So if you're not doing anything meaningful in the present, then you become a non-factor historically. No one knows you anymore, right? And when you're not known for anything, who's going to call your name? How are you remembered, right? So if your name isn't called, you're not remembered. And if you're not remembered, you vanish.
Yeah.
So to the question, I do want to add to the question. I touched it a little bit just now, but to the question, why is that we look at history as something that happened so long ago? Because history is believed to be made in the past. That's why. You know, the way the Carvey touched on, he said, because of our miseducation, the way that we have been trained to view history is to look at it as if it's something that occurs in the past, separate and independent of us. So that's why we look at it that way. That's the orientation. So the orientation is off. We don't look at history as being something that's made in the present by our active involvement within the making of history. So when you look at it from that way, you're going to think about it differently. So when you do read the stories of a Booker T. Washington, a Harriet Tubman, a Sojourner Truth, a Henry Highland Garner, a Henry Bishop McNeil Turner, a Marcus Garvey, even though we're talking about 100, 150 years ago, you can read those stories and place yourself in the story, because you know you're reading about you. So if you're reading about Marcus Garvey, you're reading about you. If you're a man and you're reading about Henry Bishop McNeil Turner, you're reading about you. That's you, because African people are a continuum and African people are a collective. So when you're reading and you know that you're reading about yourself, it goes back to the agency. Agency is how you see yourself involved in the process of creating something. So we're active in the process. And when we're active in the process now, that means we've been active in the process in the past. So when we look at history and we talk about, you know, the great societies in Africa, let's go there. Let's jump out of the United States of America for a minute. So we're going to travel. So let's jump on the continent of Africa. Let's jump into Ghana, you know, the kingdom of Ghana. So when you think about the kingdom of Ghana, Ghana becomes great for us because the king, you know, those who was charged with the task of national governance, they did what? They regulated the trade routes. But why did he regulate the trade routes? Because historically, he understood his history, and his history told him that the north, where the salt was at, had to travel through Ghana to get to the south where the gold was at. Right? So they had to come through there. So Kumasi becomes this big trading center within Ghana, a big trading center. But that's our genius. So we would call that economics. Today we would say that's an economic system today. But that came out of what? Human relations. Human relations produced that. And so history becomes important because we can look at that and see that, the kingdom of Ghana becomes this great empire on the basis of what? Trade. Essentially on the basis of trade. The trade regulation, tax and everything that came through and everything that came out. It was taxed and it became great. So we look at history to learn from that. So what does it tell us? It tells us that we don't have to do business the way these white people do business. But we don't know that. So what we do, when we go into business, which is really a bad word, right? We gotta reframe the word, right? So I'm struggling to use the word business because that's not what we called it. We just had barter trade. We traded, right? Because essentially you trade to empower everybody, not just a small minority. See, under capitalistic rule, it's a small minority that's trying to, starve everybody else and be greedy for itself. And what we tend to do is we tend to say, well, it's just about business, it's just business, it's just business. And we begin to think, speak, and be as they are. And that's not what it's about. It's about us understanding as much as we can about who we are by way of understanding how we once were. Because how we once were was prosperous. We can go all through the continent of Africa and look at us before we encountered those Arabs or those Europeans and see us doing what? Prospering. So it's not like we don't know how to do that. And I'm gonna throw this in there. Because oftentimes people say things like, well, white people, black people didn't have no currency, so we needed a currency system. They say things like that. Once again, when you don't know your history, you're going to repeat the lies that you've been told by your oppressors. We had a currency system throughout the continent, We believe that they created all these things because we don't know enough about who we are. That's why history becomes so important. Because the more you know the history, the more you understand history, the more you can become the history. And when we become the history, we act as we once act as a people. And that's what history is about. It orientates you. It gives you that advantage. It gives you an advantage. That's what history does. It gives you an advantage. And the advantage is what we should be striving for.
Dealing from a health perspective, I can run across a number of clients who have trouble sleeping, and oftentimes this case of them trouble sleeping is due to some type of stress or stressors not allowing them to sleep. Either they having a hard time going to sleep, or if they go to sleep, they find themselves waking up in the middle of the night, worrying about a number of different things. And I believe that the realness of history as it pertains to this conversation is understanding that the more that we come to understand who and what we are as a people, that allows us to eliminate or to reduce a lot of those stresses. Now, Baba just mentioned an aspect of economics. One of the stresses that I know really affects people is the loss of a loved one. Now, personally, my personal story, my father, he made his transition in 2017. Now, that whole process, it wasn't an easy process. A lot of that I was carrying, solo. Then my mother made her transition in 2019. So I was hit back to back with the transitioning of parents. And fortunately for me, I had a very close relationship with my parents. And while I was going through the process of understanding it and accepting it and being able to heal from it, one of the things that I came across was maybe about 4 people who also lost a parent recently. And some of those folks didn't kind of have that same energy that I had. They didn't have that same look of resilience. And for anybody who has lost someone close to them, you may know what I'm talking about. The history allowed me to understand that the transitioning of my parents does not mean a severed communication with my parents. The transitioning of my parents does not mean that I no longer have communication with them. Fortunately, I still have some videos, some audios from prior conversations that I use, especially when it comes to raising some of my young ones right here who were not born when they made their transition. But that has never stopped me from communicating with my mother or my father, going to the altar. That's never stopped me, because my mom always liked it. When I would get some pizza, she always wanted the crust, the crust part of the pizza. So that never stopped me from putting that crust on a plate and putting it on my altar in honor of my mother, or giving some vegan food to my father, who in his later years started to have an appreciation for some vegan food, interestingly enough. But I want to put that on the floor as a real aspect of how history allows you to heal, it allows you to develop, and it allows you to have some peace of mind. Get some sleep at night. Be able to smile when you go through adversity, because our people have a history of going through adversity. So if we understand the perspectives which allowed them to go through their adversity and come out on top, to allow them to keep moving forward, then you and I can also have that same perspective. And we may not get it right at first, right? We may not have all the pieces down. Excuse me, baby. Thank you. We may not have all the pieces down packed, but if we have the depths, the desire, the endurance, the patience, and the sacrifice to try to understand it and to make those steps periodically, it is definitely something that is worthwhile. It has great, profound results. That was just my story. I didn't know if anybody else had another story that they wanted to share. Come on.
Yeah, I wanted to add on to what you had said, Baba. Because Baba, he took us to Africa, and then you spoke on how you basically been basically dealing with your parents' transition. And I want to speak on the aspect of how Africa gave us that understanding of the joining of the two worlds. And it's not really like two separate things, but it's like you do have an unseen reality and a seen reality. The Congo people, they call it Kuimpemba is the invisible reality. Kuinseke is the visible reality. And they're joined in a circle. And so even now, our ancestors are present with us. Behind me, you see, I got these obituaries behind me, but these are my family members. And I go to them every morning. Every morning I go to them and I speak to them. I greet them in the African language. And I call on their names. And I say, I call on the Netraheka to summon the healing power, building power, and fighting power of our ancestors. And I say that intentionally because I'm coming for y'all, to y'all, not only to give y'all honor, but to also ask for y'all assistance in my everyday life in this fight for our people. But that comes from Africa. This whole thing about people understanding, is there a higher power? Do I not believe in it? Do I not? That wasn't a question for us. Like we knew that was a fact, and we knew how to go places that people couldn't go. Studying African science, there are certain things that our ancestors knew how to do, but if I started telling you, you'd be like, man, this dude is crazy. So it's like, and that's the reason why we had secret societies, quote unquote. It wasn't necessarily that, they was trying to manipulate people, but it's like certain information was only for certain people because it depended on how deep you was willing to go in your mind and what you was going to do with the knowledge. And so with that being said, like this whole interaction between spirit and physicality is something that we must always maintain because it's always around us. Like the spirit is able to manifest through the physical. And so just as much as we need the spirit need the physical. Because when the babies just get ready to come here, they're not trying to come to no trashy world. The ancestors see that, they're not like, look, we y'all down, y'all over there. Not I was about to say down there, but it's y'all there, and we're here, and we need y'all to do this because we want to send y'all some more warriors. But if we send y'all some more warriors, the warriors can be living any kind of way. And not only that, we're responsible for finishing our ancestors' work. You know, Baba Matutu Shakur went to prison for 38 years. Baba Geronimo Pratt went to prison for 27 years. Mama Asada Shakur, prison for 2 years and been exiled ever since. Couldn't go to her mama funeral. Couldn't go to her, sister's graduation and things like that. So they pass away. They put in all that work for the people. They pass away. You think we don't got no responsibility here to maintain that relationship so we can keep the communication going on? And that's why we have altars set up. Because our altars, it's like a cell phone. You know, your parents give you your cell phone for the first time. They make sure your phone is charged when you leave the house. So when we come here to Earth, we're visiting Earth. We're visiting Earth because in the spirit realm, we actually have a society that we came from in the spirit realm. Some people are leaders, some people have different responsibilities inside the spirit realm. And when we come here with a plan and a mission. And so when we set up our ancestor altar, that's there to keep the line of communication open. So if an ancestor got a message for you, like, come on, I'm gonna put this on your mind. You may think it's your thought, but that thought just came from another ancestor, or it came from an Orisha, or it came from some new energy that want to come back to Earth, but they want you to handle that before they get here. And so, when we look at Africa, we can really see the reasons why our ancestors was able to do so many powerful things because our connection with spirit was untouchable. It was untouchable and unmatched by anybody else. And so, that's one of the really things that I really appreciate when we look at ancient Africa was our ability to transcend physical reality and also bring back from the spirit reality here to keep things realistic. We wasn't some people that's just trying to fly in the sky.
Great point. Great point. So I got a question I want to put to the floor. Listening to both of you, I was thinking about, this topic of history, Black history. Is it real? Is it something that's real? Is it meaningful? Is it important? Why should we know it? And I think the question would be, how can one best learn Black history? Is it something as simple as picking up one book, reading that book, finishing that book, reading another book? Is it that simple to just read books? I guess that's the question.
I'll let you jump in, Bob. I was just talking for a minute, Bob.
I mean, if you want to go, I was jotting down some ideas. But I mean, hey, you let a brother go first. I'll take you up on your invite. So that's a great question because first and foremost, PLM, we have a study class, and the study class is coming back. So we're going to drop that maybe now. If it hasn't been dropped before, PLM study class is coming back. And one of the best ways, one of the great ways that you can learn Black history is to be a part of a study group, of a collective. Me personally, I like PLM study class personally because it's geared towards critical thinking, it's geared towards reading, there's questions, there is questionnaires and quizzes and exams. There's a body of people there who are capable of answering the difficult questions. So I just like PLM study class. But if for whatever reason you're not in a location or able to be a part of PLM study class, then find a group of people collectively that you can go and study with. It's great to have other people's feedback. You can get an idea of how other people are seeing things, and you can juxtapose it to how you're seeing things. Are you seeing things the same? Do you have the same kind of questions? Do you have the same kind of challenges? Do you see things the same and you're able to help somebody else move along in their process? all of that helps to facilitate that general good feeling, the feeling of just feeling good as you're going through the history and learning it. And that is what I found to be one of the key things that keeps a person engaged. And let's just say, because sometimes in a study class, you may have a book that's just about this, and you might be able to get through that book without a problem. And then you may have a book, the next book look like this. You know, you got two different sized books. So you may make it through this kind of book, but when this kind of book gets slapped on top, you may not necessarily make it through that book without a challenge or a struggle. So having people around, being a part of dialogue and conversation is going to help to move you through the material. Another aspect that I found to be very beneficial outside of the study class is to see yourself in that history. You have to be able to, as you're reading the story, and many of us do it naturally and automatically, as you're reading, or let's just put it like this way. Imagine you were reading something that you were interested in. Half of the time we can place ourselves in the story as we're reading it. Or let's just say you might be a person who may watch a movie. And as that movie is playing out, you might be so caught in and so captured by that movie that you've imagined yourself to be in that movie. And if somebody get hit or somebody get stabbed up in that movie, you might, you might flinch, you might duck, because you've gotten yourself so involved with the storyline. And that's essentially how history has to be. We have to be able to find ways to put ourselves in the story. So yeah, this particular book is The Peculiar Institution, Slavery in the Antebellum South. So as I'm going through a book like this, I'm able to place myself in the story, because as the author is writing about something, let's say, for example, the aspect of running away, right? I look at Harriet Tubman's story and I see a bold, courageous woman. I see a bold, courageous, warrior, spirited ancestor. And to me, I would imagine myself that I say, I would want to be on that same page. If I'm imagining myself on the plantation seeing this oppression, I'm imagining I could be able to run away. I want to be a part of the insurrection. I want to do bop, 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 this, that, and the third. And then as the story progresses, now he's adding more information, and you're really getting a chance to see that the whole nature of somebody simply running away was not as, I'll be honest, easy. Because when I'm, my ignorance put in my mind that it was just something that the ancestors just kept them there. There was a number of different fear factors. They could have just ran away. But it was nothing easy about the mere fact of running away, let alone running away at a certain time, coming back, freeing other people. There were a number of patrols. Every white person was empowered to be a part of the militia or the police force. In addition to the patrols you had a number of people who were just jealous, white people who were jealous. So you had constant patrols. They knew all the routes, the typical routes that a person would take. Many of them were armed. A lot of time the state would pay for a person to get out and join the militia or the patrol. There was a large number of incentives to keep our ancestors within their captivity. So for anybody to navigate around different patrols, to engage in a combat with some of those initial, let's say, just the committees that were formed to patrol the roads and the highways with the dogs. Throughout all those incentives, there are many ancestors who still made that attempt. So as I'm learning this, now I'm programming my mind to say, okay, I'm able to visualize, all right, if I'm escaping, what might it look like? You know, if I'm going through, what might Mama Harriet have seen? What would a Nat Turner may have experienced? How would they have felt? And that the nature of being able to do that allows you to stick in the story and to stick with the story, regardless of how many pages there are or how detailed the author may.
Just sound one out, Tommy.
Dang, when my sound went out, I think my finger may have hit my mute button.
No,
When you
just
said
now.
just now,
Okay.
you
Okay, all right, cool. So I guess that's my body let me know, hey brother, wrap it up. So anyway, I was thank you, baby. My daughter just handed me her book. So anyway, I would just say take that time to find ways of putting yourself in the story. Hotep.
Hotel, great, great. You got something you want to add to that, Dekai, if you want to?
Yeah, because those stories was very impactful for me as well. You know, it's like a movie in my mind. I'm a pictographic person. You know, even when I read certain things, I can actually see the words in my mind. You know, when I start reading. Um, but like it make yourself put yourself in the story. It's like a good movie. But in addition to that, it's the things that work in conjunction with the study class. Like one of the things that I really appreciate about PLM is that the relationships, the people that you meet, and then the rituals that's created. You know, at one point in time we had a marketplace going on where you can buy books, you could buy clothes, you could buy food, you could buy herbs and things like that. That was good. You know, having men and women celebrations where the women they come together and they celebrate the men. You know, they put on performances for us. They feeding us. You know, they buying us gifts. The community come together and they just do that, just because. And then the men come together. We do the same thing for the women. Something like that is very beautiful. You know, you don't forget things like that. Um, Traveling with PLM. That's one thing that I really love, man. Like, you know, I don't like driving as much now, but just getting on the road, you know, going to Atlanta, you know, going to Nwalamu Baruti house. Like, because these people, they are celebrities for when we look at the Afro Center reality, you know, someone like Baba Imhotep, you know, celebrity, you know, uh, and Nwalamu Baruti, celebrity, Mama Marimba Ani, celebrity. And so these are our greats. And so being able to go on trips and meet these people, sit in their house, speak to them, you know, look them in their eyes and they're giving you their wisdom, like that's perfect because you're in the books reading about it. Then you go outside your house and you live it. Like it's something that, you know, can't be touched, you know, going down to Mississippi, you know, seeing our brother, Baba Obafemi, before Hodie race first, brother. You know, we seeing him down there, down in Mississippi, you know, seeing the Black Liberation Movement and seeing the work that they doing, you know, they down there working with a whole lot of street organizations. They coming there, a bunch of youth coming in there, you know, people calling them gangs, but no, they coming in there and they really listening to what's being said and like, I'm here, you know, we here with you, Baba. And so, just being able to go on those trips, meet people, build those relationships, it's just something that you can't never take out your mind. And then to know that these people are working for the same thing that you want to see happen in the world, you know, uniting African people so we can have our own empire and take care of our people. Like to me, it makes the whole thing real, because it's one thing to read the books, but if you can't live the lifestyle to make the books come alive, it's almost like, you know, somebody giving you $1 million and you just leave that $1 million in the bank your entire life. Like, look, scared money don't make no money. We know that. So at the end of the day, when we get knowledge, you got to use the knowledge and you have to create the reality. That's the whole purpose of having the knowledge, is to create the reality that we need to see happen. And one of the things that I can attest to is that PLM, like, we've always been doing it in so many different ways. You know, we can go on and on and on, but that's one of the most things. Like the study class is complemented by several other rituals, events, you know, initiatives to be able to push our people forward and also take care of us, you know, the revolutionaries. We also take care of ourselves.
Great point. So what I heard both of you said essentially, you know, Tameen highlighted essentially, you know, don't read the history from a disconnected place. Read it by way of inserting yourself within it, seeing yourself as being a participant in the stories, in the history, which is excellent. For those of you that's listening, we help you understand how to study so you can get it, in a better way. And Dakari, he amplified the same thing, but he added on the connective piece in terms of the social aspect. So Dakari highlighted, the theoretical piece, the study is great, but then it's the social aspect of the study, because what we study must be reinforced within the socialization. And then, like you said, we create the reality, right? And in creating that reality, that in turn reinforces what it is that we're studying, because what we study, we must become, and we become it by being it, and we be it in practice. So for many people, they just may read. Reading is great. We should read because it does expand your mind and it gives you information. But beyond the reading, there has to be a component wherein you are able to act on what you've read about. So that's the reason why, that, PLM study class was called the African Awareness and Critical Thinking Study Class. And the motto was where study meets practice. Like for us, the study class is no good if it doesn't translate into community development. So if a community isn't coming out of that study class, then what's the basis? What's the purpose? So you have to build out of your studies, and by building that community element, that socialization piece, is where you become better in being your history. So when you walk, when you think, when you talk, when you act, your history just gonna come through you. You don't gotta think about it. You ain't gotta what do I do next? You don't have to do that, because you've created the space to just perpetually be. And many of us don't do that because we approach history as an academic pursuit only. And it can't be that. You can't approach history as an academic pursuit. It can't be that. History has to be approached as something that you are actively partaking in. And by your participation in it, you're allowing it to transform you. So history becomes a transformative experience rather than an academic pursuit. It's transformative. You should be transformed by the history because you become history. You become intimate with a Nat Turner. You become intimate with Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Mark Delaney, Paul Cuffey, Richard Allen. If there's an intimate relationship that begins to develop at a spirit level, because you are now involving yourself in a very intimate way in the history, because that's only now. See, and when you understand that there's only now, that which you think occurred 100 years ago is still right here in this space, in this now. And you can link and sync with it when you are studying the history the correct way, processing it the correct way, and you're acting on it. Not just talking, but you're acting. Don't talk about community if you're not building community. Don't talk about family if you're not building family. Don't talk about complementary relationship if you're not building that, right? We do too much talking for show. And that's the reason why the history doesn't manifest inside you in a powerful way. Because most of us are just what? We're just faking it to get along, right? If you talk community development, then we should be able to see aspects of that within your behavior, that you are actively engaging in community development endeavors. If you're talking about complementary relationships, then we should be able to look at you and see those aspects in what you're doing. See you literally building a complementary relationship. If you're talking about family, we should see you engaged in family, building family in some capacity. If you're talking about, organizational capacity, organizational development, whatever, right? If we use it in history, then we should be able to see that, because history is not what we think about. History is not what we romanticize about. History is not what it's become sensational. History is that what we do, because history is alive, it's real. It's an impulse, it's real, it's a dynamism, right? It's not static. And when we understand it that way, we get to the business of doing the real work. And that's the reason why a Dr. Carter G. Woodson was able to do the things that he did in terms of Black History Month. coming out of Negro History Week, or Dr. taking a joke, doing the things that he was able to do in terms of revolutionizing how we understood and seeing the approach to understanding Kemet, and Dr. John Henry Clark doing the things he was able to do in terms of history and understanding the world knowledge, or Dr. John G. Jackson, or Dr. Ben, or Dr. Asa Hilliard. Like, they was able to do these things because they understood that they stood in history by becoming a part of history, by doing it. And that's what we have to be able to do. And you do that by coming to understand what it is, by learning the history, right? And the history is something that we will forever learn. You don't just learn a degree and you stop. We forever learn history by always doing it consistently. That's the most important thing about studying our history.
Yeah. If I could, I just want to also be able to just tie in one more thing, because for those of our people that's listening, we just really hope that you're digesting everything. We appreciate everybody that's been joining. But like, I think it's really important for us to look at ourself, and how we could really fit into the larger picture. Like, because we are supposed to be adding to the history, like when I look at my life, like, it's no accident that I'm here right in this camera and been doing this work with PLM for the amount of time that I have been, because, when I was coming from high school, I just knew that I was going to the NFL. You couldn't tell me nothing. Like, I'm on a football field playing games and stuff. People on the opposing team telling me, "Oh yeah, bro, you're gonna go to the league." So my head was pumped up. I'm not gonna say I was the most excellent person on the field, but I was good, and like that's where I was going. But it got to a certain point where stuff just kept getting in the way. I'm just like, dang, like what's going on? Like, but this is when you gotta be able to know how, your destiny and divine intervention and things that's, you're not necessarily supposed to be focusing on. Life going kind of like, start shaking up a little bit. And if you don't pay attention, you can really get distracted. And so it's like, I think it's important for us to be able to listen to the signs in our life, because, I actually wanted to come this way. But I came this way also because I was also being obedient to like my life for real. When things started, kind of getting shaky with football, like my paperwork just kept like getting in the way. Like I was playing, I walked on that FAMU. I made the team my freshman year. I made the team, and I tried out for running back, and a receiver coach asked for me. He said, "I want you to come play receiver." So I made the team as a wide receiver. And then, I came back, and then they told me, "Oh yeah, your physical expired, so you got to try it all over again." I was not feeling that, and I was already missing Maryland, so I came back to Maryland, and then I tried out for Morgan. And once again, I get on the field, I make this amazing catch. The coach not even looking at me. I get up all hype. He not even looking. His back is turned. People in the stand saying, "Hey, bro, yeah, good job, bro, yeah, yeah." I turn around. The coach is not looking. I'm like, "Are you serious?" I get up all pumped up for no reason. Then shortly after that, they pull me out for my paperwork again. You gotta sit to the side. Something wrong with your paperwork. I'm just like, look, what's going on, man? Something is wrong. And so, one thing led to another, and my mind started growing more towards what's going on with my people, because I was studying sociology at Morgan State. And that's when I started learning about capitalism. And so I just think that, when we talk about fitting into Black history, because we are Black, but when we talk about like doing something to really change something and add something to the thrust, I think we got to really pay attention to what we're doing, and don't feel like we got to fit in, because it's easy to think we got to be able to fit in. That's one of the things that I do like about J. Cole. He was adamant about saying, like certain music he don't listen to. Even if he do think, okay, that's what they like. At the end of the day, I just know that's not right. And I know that we shouldn't be making music like that. But J. Cole is extremely successful still as an artist. And so I just feel like, when we really own who we are and we really believe in what we got, I just think that as long as we doing right by our culture, I just think that's what matters the most. And I believe, we got to pay attention to the signs in our life and really take that large step forward in our destiny and what we're supposed to be doing for our people. That's what I really want our people to get from everything that I've been saying, and from what my comrades been saying tonight.
Look, I'm gonna beg you up. Because a lot of times everybody got somebody say, "Man, you should have been at the league. He was good. He was nice." Listen, I'm going to testify. We done had a we do one of our annual pack and bring during the summertime. We was getting out there playing football. This brother, I swear, he jumped like 10 feet in the air just to catch a football. I seen it. So I'm gonna be your stamp, man. what he's saying is it legit. That boy was nice out there on that field, man.
I appreciate it, Bob.
I was quite impressed. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So yeah, so we have reached our mark, our time for us to sign off. We want to give thanks and honor and praise to all of you who have joined us, and we hope that you have enjoyed this discussion as it pertains to and relates to Black history. We will be back next Thursday at 9 p.m. To continue this discussion. So please join in, share this video, share this live. Invite a friend out if you like the content. That work with us, build with us as we build this thing out. So yes, and PLM, we got books that we wrote and stuff like that. I got a book out, No More, which is a great book dealing with some different aspects of African spirituality, which we call spirit living. Mama Ife have a new book she just dropped, Ma'aka Rule. Mama Gina dropped the book out on African women in the 21st century. Baba Disa dropped the book, Juggernaut in the Struggle and Battle Surgery. Mama Tiambe dropped 2 children books, 2 instructional color books for children. So if you're interested in purchasing and if you're interested in purchasing and supporting any of those endeavors, man, just contact us, reach out to us. Mama Ife, reminded me that I need to make sure I mention that not only did she put out her Ma'aka Rule, but she also put out her journal, a brand new journal, her Ma'aka Rule journal, and her children's book that she put out. So these mamas, saying, and these mamas and Babas, you notice I said Baba Disa put 2 books out, Mama Issa put her books out, and Mama Gina got out several books and that's out already, and she got several books that's coming out. So PLM, we put in the work and we build an institution, because in order for us to move our people forward, we got to build the content that we're going to use to educate our people. You know what I'm saying? So just support the work that we do. If you don't know who PLM is, but you can get on any of our pages, man. You can track us back on social media. You can go back 15 years and you're going to see nothing but consistency. You can go through my page for 15 years and you can find nothing but consistency. That's who we are. That's what we do. So as we closing out, once again, this is the School of Urban Philosophy, where we always straight up, straightforward, and straight to the point. And we're looking forward to seeing all of you to show up with us again next Thursday. With that, we say a BB48 and race first.
Race first.
Race first.